there was a really telling moment in the debate where everybody was asked if they believe that humans cause climate change, and not a single person, not one Republican raised their hand to say that it was caused by climate change. Not one. All right, everyone. We did it. We watched a 2.5 hour long GOP presidential primary debate where Donald Trump didn't even decide to show up because he thought that he would win simply by not showing up and allowing the fodder crew do what they do best, which is make a fool of themselves. And honestly, I can't lie, he was right. He was right. Oh, bro won without even showing up. Bro won by not showing up. Actually, he went on Tucker Carlson to go on his failing Twitter show instead, which I always thought was super interesting, if I'm going to be honest with you. Be safe in the GOP debate is cringe. All right, everyone. But from what we have seen, give me one word that you would describe the GOP debate. Give me one word to describe how the GOP debate was and how it went. Cringe, hilarious, detarded. Many people are saying that. Dicks, trashy, circus, cut. Hey, what's a circus? Guantanamo. Okay, Guantanamo Ron was there. That's true. Dumpster fire, irrelevant, sad, exclamation point, nothing, sad, no exclamation point. Directionless, stinky, cartoon. All right. Yeah, I would say all of these things are pretty true. If I'm gonna be honest with you, I think all of these things are pretty true. I would say it was pretty bad. It was a huge circus, and it showed us how like the TikTokification and the fascistification and the fascist sort of direction that Republicans are moving in is going. Because we've seen some stuff online, but this is one of the first times where we see a lot of the things that have been brewing online kind of makes it into the real world, because Republicans have moved into thinking less in terms of actual policy and thinking more in terms of just garbage and culture war, just bullshit. That's just what they are right now. Buzzwords, culture war bullshit, and just stupidity. And that's basically it. And outside of that, almost nothing is really going on and happening, because they never had actual genuine policies to make the world a better place. And making the world better is way hard. It's super hard, but you know, saying that the transgenders and the Mexicans are destroying society is actually super easy. Okay, so I took a lot of notes, and we can just go down the list of some of the things that I thought were super interesting and just talk about it a little bit, because it was a wild ride. Okay, so they basically started off the whole thing by talking about how there's a decline in the country from Bidenomics. I'm not even sure what they would necessarily call Bidenomics. Like inflation's been going up and down, like a massive war in the developed world is going to do that. Like almost every country is having inflation issues. One of the biggest things is that America is actually having the least inflationary issues of almost all of the developed world when it comes to the recent inflation spikes. And we've had the lowest types of inflation and increase in food prices and energy prices of almost any other country. Mostly because, once again, Biden actually is pro drilling and fracking, and America makes most of the energy that we use. And so when we want more energy, we can just get it from another country. A lot of the times, or we can just get it at home. Like we have oil at home, but literally we are the second. So aren't we the second biggest oil producing country in the world, right after Saudi Arabia? Like nobody makes more oil than us besides Saudi Arabia. Literally, the only reason why we don't export a bunch of oil is because we use most of the oil that we drill. Mom, can we get oil? We have oil at home. But literally, we literally have oil at home. I mean, I went to the pump recently. I was upset because it cost $4. I would like an electric car instead. I would really like it that instead of like the government focusing on bringing oil prices down, that they would focus more on bringing electric cars and vehicles and public transportation up, so that I wouldn't have to worry about driving everywhere. I live 2 miles away from my main road, where I have my like grocery stores and everything. I would really love to be able to walk there instead of drive there. I hate the idea that leaving my house costs money, but I can't really do anything about that. And no president is really working on that too much, even though we'll talk about it in another video at some point in time, where public transit is actually, especially trains, is getting a huge bumperino cappuccino. But we'll talk about that another time. There's nothing really going on with that at the moment. It's the U.S., Saudi Arabia. Arabia and then Russia. Oh, we're the number one oil producing country in the world. That's super funny. I know we're one or two. It's one of the two, which means that like to bring down oil and climate change, we're one of the most important countries pertaining to that. But that's a talk for later. Anyways, basically everybody there was like, oh yeah, Biden's cringe. Bidenomics is so evil and stupid. COVID was terrible, and the lockdowns or literally spawned, or is literally the idea of actual unironic Satan. Christie tried to chime in. He's a loser. Like Brett Baer called him out and said that New Jersey got its credit score reduced 11 times under his watch, and then he went for a while. It was really funny. I can't lie. I hate that guy so much, and he's polling at 1%. Bro's actually losing money being being like a presidential nominee, unless the only reason why he's doing it is to be able to have the Chiron on MSNBC when he's back on for the never Trump Republican voice of the hour to talk about how he used to run for president and he knows what it's like to be there, whatever bullshit that is, and then like to promote his shitty ass book deal or whatever. Who cares? Nobody cares. Like a lot of people on stage and a lot of people there cheered for the idea of putting money back in the hands of states, which I think would be a decent idea if the states would actually, if like the states were forced to spend the money in good ways. The only thing is that like a lot of people tried to, and we're going to be talking about the Ukraine issue like a little bit later, but a lot of Republicans bring up, you see this from Republicans a lot, or people who are like anti giving money to Ukraine. You see this a lot, right? Where we go, yeah, we should give money to Ukraine because not doing that is a horrible, completely shitty, stupid idea that'll lead to way more problems for the US, NATO, the geopolitics as a whole, and our greatest geopolitical rivals will get like a huge W, which is worse for just like the average developed world, in my personal opinion. With that being said, it doesn't make any sense for them to say like send money back to the states to spend it well, when, if you remember, Mississippi, over the stimulus checks and money going back to states to help out with deficits when it comes to taxes and spending to help build public infrastructure, places like Mississippi got like more money than we've given to Ukraine, and have gotten more money in the same time frame than Ukraine probably will ever get from us. And in the future, I know that for a fact that we're going to be giving more money to like Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and Georgia and Florida than we will ever to Ukraine. It just doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, the money that we spend on Ukraine isn't just dollars. So we're not just giving them American dollars. We're giving them actual weapons and kit and tools and other infrastructure things. But the thing is, like, places like Mississippi doesn't build it. They don't do anything with the money. They literally don't do anything with the money. We talked about this a little while ago, how everybody who's like a conservative or who pretends to be like an actual like lefty tries to say that we should be spending money on places like Jacksonville, Mississippi, because they don't have clean running water, even though Jacksonville, Mississippi has billions of dollars and billions more than Ukraine has gotten through this entire through the entire time that we've been giving money to Ukraine kind of period. But they still have dirty water because the Republicans in the state literally just couldn't give a shit less about the people in their own state. And it's not like they're spending the money terribly, they're just not spending the money kind of period. Actually, let me show you. Okay, so here's this December of last year. Mississippi left $47 million in aid to poor families unspent, prompting calls for reforms. The last report, which was in 2020, showed that Mississippi had not spent $47 million allocated for poor people. Those funds are just sitting there where Mississippi can draw from them at any time, whenever it wants. And in 2020, it left $31 million unspent. It's still just sitting there. So, I mean, I don't want to say that spending money on Ukraine is better than spending money on Mississippi, because I think both should get money to like make life better. But same way as I don't always think that the money should just go into the hands of the people leading, I don't believe that money should just go into the hands of the people leading Mississippi, because they can't spend it. They're incompetent. They couldn't give a shit less about their constituents. And it's proof for this. If any place with if any leader who has a poor population got $47 billion or $1 million, if it had $47 million to help their people, They would do it. Why in the world would you ever? You're telling me that you have all these problems and you're complaining about how you're not getting any money from the federal government and how the federal government needs to worry more about its people while you just don't do anything. And this is a classic conservative thing. This is how conservatives keep their people populated, stupid, and also poor. Is because when good things happen federally that they fight for, that they fight against federally, those same senators and those same House members that go to Washington to fight against their own state getting federal aid, they come back and say it's so great they got this federal aid, and then they don't spend any of the federal aid. This is something that's happened time and time and time and time again. It happened during the Obama administration, where the Republican governors opted their own states out of Medicaid expansion and Medicare expansion. They also opted themselves out of Obamacare as well, the Affordable Health Care Act. They also, and then it happened again during the COVID-19 pandemic, where Republican governors came in and opted their state out of the extra unemployment benefits. Like, what in the world are you doing? I didn't even know that was possible. And the fact that they just did it so callously, so unfeelingly, specifically because they want more people to suffer, because they think that more people suffering is more money in their coffers, because those people will have to fight tooth and nail for a race to the bottom with the lowest paying, worst benefits jobs possibly imaginable. And so those companies can have higher profits because they're paying their workers less, because those workers will accept less because their lives are worse. And that's just American capitalism for you. And that's how the Republicans would like to push that shit. I didn't really hear much about that when it came from when talking about rich men north of Richmond. And on top of that, like, they talked about that song by some random ass dude. It's like this. I haven't really listened to. I read the synopsis, like I read the lyrics of Rich Men North of Richmond. If you don't know what that is, and if you don't, like, congratulations to being normal. Basically, it's this weird ass little song that some like random dude made about how politicians are all bad and government all bad, and we should be helping people, but also we should stop the fat fucks who are 5'2" and 300 pounds from eating Doritos with their food stamps, because that's what's really making America poor. And then has completely incoherent beliefs outside of that, and got called out for being a Republican. But then he said, I'm not actually a Republican, I just don't like poor people eating a lot of food. And it was just super weird and just super peculiar. Anyways, that like YouTube video that the Republicans heralded as their swan song for 2023 about how all the Democrats are bad and evil or whatever, and them are stealing your future away from you with like climate change, with you believing climate change is real or whatever, and wanting poor people to have healthcare. I guess they actually just talked about that for a little while, which is just so incredibly strange. Nobody had any real points. It was literally just culture war bullshit, actual unironic culture war bullshit to start off a presidential primary nomination in one of the most turbulent political times in the entire country that we've had ever since an actual unironic civil war. But okay, I guess we can talk about a YouTube video where some guy with a ginger beard talks about how politicians bad and whatnot. Okay, super interesting. Anyways, moving on from that actual unironic bullshit. The person who I think is going to come out the most, and that I've seen come out the most, Elon Musk's actual favorite in this debate was I was really so close to saying Slavoj Vivek again, but it's Vivek Ramaswamy, who's an Indian American businessman who runs a pharmaceutical company, who charges out the ass for every single life-saving and like life-improving drug that they could possibly that they could possibly sell for the most amount of, so to increase the amount of money in his bank account. He says that he loves God even though he's Hindu, sorry. And he came out as basically the most Trumpian clown to be there. Basically, he was doing all the Trump mannerisms. He was doing one of these, and he was doing the these, and he was doing the these as well. He was doing all of them. Actually, he was even doing some of these, right? And that was kind of wild to me, even though he's like Indian and also American, and he was born in actual, literal, unironic Cincinnati, Ohio, which is wild. Anyways, those two, China. He was harping on China as well. It was just wild stuff. I wish they were embarrassed. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, this dude, he went to Harvard. He's trying to proposition himself as some guy who's like outside of the matrix or whatever. He literally went to Harvard. Okay, he went to Harvard Law School, and he's a multi-billionaire. I think basically what happened is that he saw that Donald Trump made it by appealing to Republicans as like the culture war outside billionaire guy who knows how to run a company, so he knows how to run a country. And so he thinks that he can do the same exact thing in that Donald Trump did, but like as like a kind of different type of guy, as like the immigrant guy, but the good immigrant guy, not like the bad immigrant guy. So he thinks that should be shot and killed at the border. It's just super interesting, weird stuff. And also, I didn't know this, but he also, while in college, liked to rap Eminem in like libertarian themed covers, but his stage name's alter ego was called Davek. He called himself Davek. Eminem fan. Well, I'm not sure if he was an Eminem fan, but he was like, the taxes, the tariffs, social security, gotta go. He was like that type of, he was pulling that type of shit. This country will lose itself. It's just absolutely wild. Please, this lore, Shark, you are our hero. We'll be talking about it sometime, but not at the moment. Please, let's watch him rap. When we do a full breakdown of this clown, then we'll watch it, but not at the moment because we have other stuff to talk about, and I don't want this talk to be like multiple hours long. But we will talk about it sometime. But yes, actually, he did call himself Davek, and he made libertarian themed Eminem remix rap videos about why social safety nets have to go and why taxes are illegal and evil. So anyways, that was super interesting, I guess. Really some remarkable stuff going on here. I cannot lie to you. But he basically came off as the average sort of like the used car salesman type guy who's he's got all the ideas, and he talks fast, and he speaks with his hands, and he's loud, and he's forceful. You know, he took basically every single bullshit, crazy culture war, weirdo, freak position that you would imagine that one of these guys would, but he did it in a sort of really, like, I think that's what a lot of people would get, but I think he did it in a sort of like really cucked way that I think a lot of Trump supporters will pick up on, is that he wants to be like Trump, but he can't do it he can't commit to the bit 100%. Like, he tried, like, later in this debate, he tried to say that Donald Trump, he would vote for Donald Trump even if he got convicted, but he also, for like trying to overturn the election, but he also said that Donald Trump is a sore loser and we need to move on from the election as well. So like, he's basically wants to just throw out everything that happened in and around January 6th and just kind of pretend it never happened, and then just like say that Donald Trump's like super cool and epic while not supporting any of the actual things that he was going to jail for that makes him not want to actually be super like Donald Trump. So I think that's going to be picked up a lot by a lot of like Trump supporters, and I think he's going to get a lot of that type of support. And I even think that I saw in some of these polls without Donald Trump, he was actually polling above Pant Piss, by Rasmussen a little bit before the debate. If we look here on 538, here we go. Without Trump in the debate, without Trump in here at all, there's a partisan pack poll, and I'm not sure if it's in support of Swami, but it is a Rasmussen, and it shows that he is actually leading Pant Piss by 1 percentage point, which is so incredibly interesting. He's a PragerU plant. Well, we'll talk about it sometime, but I would not be surprised that he's 100% backed by like rich businessmen, as like a big rich businessman, right? Like up at the same. So he gets 24% here, but up against Donald Trump, he actually loses by some of the biggest. He loses pretty big, like 38%, which is 1% more than Pant Piss, which is still super funny. I will say. Ironically enough, he's getting a bunch of money from a Soros giant. I mean, this is just not surprising. Like, these rich business people do get. I would imagine that the whole reason he's doing this is for more money, so he can like say that he's this Republican firebrand who was done bad by the establishment, and how. But it's another thing where he's trying to sell off like, hey man, I'm not the puppet, I'm just the puppeteer, right? because that's what a lot of Republicans really enjoy. They don't like the idea of bro being a puppet, but they don't want to elect the puppet, but they're okay with electing the puppeteer. They're like, oh, I've never been puppeted. I'm just the guy doing the puppeting, and so you should vote for me because I'm not paid. I'm just doing the paying. I'm just the guy behind all the problems. So elect the guy who's behind every single problem, but don't elect the people who are being paid to do all the problems. And they just think that that's actually super cool. It's just completely fucking stupid. It's completely crazy. What is this? Swami tweeted, I'm not an isolationist. I am a Nixonian realist, the neo-conservative and liberal internationalists who can't tell the difference between these things. Stand down, new generation leads the nation. What? Why'd you send me this? What's the point of this? He loves Nixon. Well, of course. They all love Nixon. He was even doing the Nixon thing. Like, I think after the debate, he was doing the Nixon like arms up to peace sign thing right after. Yeah, he wants to be like Nixon. He wants to be brown Nixon. He wants to be caramel Nixon. Brixon? Yeah, brown Nixon. Bro think he Nixon. So true. He's probably, I mean, he claims to be a billionaire, so he's probably committed as many or more crimes than Nixon. I would imagine, right? So yeah, that guy, I like. Elon Musk said he was really big. A lot of people said he was really big. I think Charlie Kirk said that he went super crazy. A bunch of like hardcore conservative culture warriors said that they really liked the cut of his jib. And I think a lot of people who like Donald Trump, but there's going to be a split between the Donald Trump lovers, the Donald Trump gaggers, who are like, I love Donald Trump, but if he was like less crazy and committed less crimes, I think he would be better. And I think he would appeal to those people, as small as they are. Because like, how in the world would you say like, oh yeah, we love Donald Trump and we'd vote for him even if he committed all these crimes and even if he gets convicted for all of these crimes, but at the same time saying that, oh, I want somebody who commits less crimes. It's just, I'm not saying that like it's incoherent so they wouldn't believe it. They're conservatives. They love incoherence. It's why they believe it. But with that being said, I just don't think it's going to appeal to as many people, and maybe he has a future at some point in time, but now is not that time. As long as Donald Trump's still in the race, which it seems like he will be into the very end. And even if that happens, I think like Pant Piss is probably going to take it over him. He just has better name recognition at the moment. But he has that sort of like used car salesman type vibe that I think a lot of conservatives will like because they love being duped. Anyways, the Republican Civil War was really started by Nikki Haley, who basically cemented herself as trying to be somebody who's like the realist type of Republican, like the return to form, sort of like Obama era, pre-Obama era type Republican, who's like who hits on all the cultural talking point memes without like going too deep into them. Every time there was like a culture war type bullshit that came up, she would like be like, oh yeah, I agree, but also we should care about this other thing that's actually important, right? She just really loves it. Did you see him and Jackson have a mid-off? What, did they fight or something? I just thought it was incredibly interesting, the type of stuff that was going on between those two. She fought a lot with Vivek. She fought a lot with Pant Piss. And a lot of those guys were having like a big back and forth. Vivek also said that we're in a cold civil war. He basically said we're in a cold cultural civil war. He is echoing Tim Pool, Dim Fool, as we like to say on this stream, where he believes that the transgenderisms and the melanin Negro pilled wackoids and the women rights and all this type of stuff is like tearing the nation apart, and we're in the throes of a incredible civil war that somebody needs to do something about, or else like everything's going to be terrible, and somebody needs to take charge on the Civil War front because that's what's really important here. And I just don't think it really is, if I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't think it's super important. It seemed like a lot of it got a decent amount of claps. Like some of them got claps, some of them didn't, on this type of stuff. I think a lot of people are kind of tired on the right, are tired of the Civil War, with tired of the idea of the Civil War, with this like big cultural Civil War, with this like big TikTokification of the entire party that happened. I just feel like there's going to be fatigue there, right? Like a lot of people on the left are never really like a part of it, and some people can say, oh, how can you say that when your channel talks a lot about like Civil War, like culture war type stuff? Well, we do, but never in the sense of we're like starting the cultural war type thing. We just respond to what conservative bullshit they're doing. I don't really like engage necessarily in the sense of in the sense of like I'm trying to start shit. Typically, it's just something really normal that happens, and then a conservative has like some sort of like epic meltdown about how this is destroying the world or transing the children or something, and then I'm like, that's incredibly stupid, and that's basically it, right? They're just full force into that type of stuff, and they think they're in a they're shadow boxing, and they're fighting fake issues. And that's just like what they're talking about with the everybody's defunding police and we need to focus on our police more and then that type of bullshit. It's just so weird. It's just so incredibly stupid. And I just, but it's to be expected. Mike Pence was there. And Mike Pence tried to say that him and his administration with Donnie was like really good for the economy. This part of the debate was mostly about the economy. Brett Baer called him out once again for saying that him and his administration spent more money and lost more jobs than any other president in the history of time, literally, except for actually back during a literal civil war, which also was incredibly funny because he didn't really have a way to get out of that either. That was a really bad point for him in the entire thing. And I always thought it was an incredibly interesting sort of juxtaposition because Pence was also on the sort of like, I'm tired of the culture war type stuff that Nikki Haley was on. A lot of the older people on stage were really sort of against. A lot of the older sort of like hardened neocon conservatives are like, weren't super on board with a lot of the culture war Donald Trump bullshit. Because they've been here before Trump and they're going to be here after Trump. Unfortunately, I wish they were all gone, but and then he was standing like right next to Pant Piss and Vivek, and they were both sort of the young dogs. They're the youngest people in the room, and also the most culture warrior type people in the room as well. And I just thought it was super juxtaposition between their back and forth. The back and forth that they had was super tense the entire night. The sort of like old guard versus the new fascist guard, like the old fascist guard versus the new fascist guard. When it comes to the party, where they're not as different as they would like to believe, but they're the way in which they would like to take the party and the things that they focus on is what really sets them apart. And they had a big slug match the entire time, but almost none of them through all of that had almost any policy whatsoever. The old heads are the ones that had more policy, but like the new heads they still basically had almost none. It was just a bunch of like wishful thinking about America just being worse and dumber and more isolated. And then the new ones were like, yeah, we can do all of that, but like, can we like make it illegal to be trans? And that was basically what like the type of shit that was. It was just super weird, but I thought the juxtaposition was super interesting. DeSantis did his normal sort of loser posting about lockdowns again. I just thought it was like it seemed like it played well with the crowd, which I would expect because they're all like, oh, lockdowns, they ended my life, what? The sort of like normal crying, moaning, pissing and shitting that conservatives do about lockdowns these days, and trying to pretend that it's still like a relevant talking point or whatever. But it got the cheers that he wanted. It seemed like he's kind of leaning back into the sort of like thing that he was doing before. He was told that the type of like culture or bullshit that he was on just wasn't really working. I mean, DeSantis is the highest polling person in the room, so he got the middle of the stage. He got a lot of time to talk, and I think he used it the same way he used it before. A lot of boring loser culture war bullshit that he's like known for. It's not super surprising. It wasn't super interesting, and I didn't really care much for it. And a lot of people in the room didn't always care everything for it. But the lockdown point is something that like went really hard, but it's not something that's super surprising. They're conservatives, right? They obviously wouldn't care that much. They never cared about it to begin with. He tried to say that he tried to do the sort of like Make America Florida again, or the Make America Florida type shit. But the entire time was it was so interesting, right, guys? How the entire thing was basically just a big Trump light experience. Everybody was trying to be Trump light. Everybody was trying to be like piggyback off of Trump, but in like lesser degrees. And Vivek being the top tier of like closest to being Donald Trump, like Nikki Haley and some other guy whose name I completely forgot, but he looked like a Lazy Town villain. But he was like the governor of North Dakota at some point in time, one of the most irrelevant states in the entire country, so nobody gives a shit. At being at the very bottom, and it was just like a big sort of list between who's like closer to Trump and who's lesser to Trump. But at the same time, everything, literally the entire thing, revolved around Trump, and that's why I really think he won, no matter what, because everything revolved around Trump. Literally everything revolved around Trump. Multiple questions in this, like, it honestly pretty short for like nine people being on stage, like 2.5 hour long debate. It was pretty fucking short. So that type of stuff just revolving completely around Donald Trump was wild to me. It's like it or not, it's just become the Trump party. Everybody has to have an answer about everything Trump does, says, thinks, believes, might think or believe, and might do. Right. And what they would do to what Trump would say or think or do. And I just think it's incredibly interesting how nobody can escape Donald Trump. If you're a Republican, you just can't do it. And I think they tried to do it a little bit when they tried to talk a little bit about, oh, do we want to be the party of 2020 or do we want to be the party of 2024? You know, and they got some cheers for it and everything, and it's cool. But at the end of the day, a lot of conservatives, even though they are pretty upset with Donald Trump and how everything revolves around him, can't let him go. Like all their demonization of like a lot of drug addicts and everything kind of fails to remember the part that the biggest drug addicts in the entire country are Trump supporters. They cannot stop chasing the dragon of that 2016 Trump magic. They just can't do it. They can't let go of him. They can't let go of 2016 and them thinking that was like a revolutionary period instead of it being what it actually was, a fluke, and also Hillary Clinton being just a shitty candidate who didn't run in the Rust Belt. And so that's why she lost the Rust Belt. And Donald Trump actually won by 70,000 votes across 3 states, the Rust Belt. And they thought it was some big cultural shift in movement. The only thing that's happened is that the Republicans, by a fluke, got some power for a couple years and did nothing with it and haven't gotten it since. They've been able to cement their power, even though they're not in office, by doing the thing that they did, which was to steal the Supreme Court. And yes, I want to call it stealing, actually, for what they did, especially during the Obama administration with Merrick Garland. But at the end of the day, like, bros are just kind of they're literally nobodies without Trump. Every single person on stage who was really trying to differentiate themselves from Trump in a meaningful way were just losers with nothing to say. And everybody who tried to stick around Donald Trump and do everything with him and suck his cock the entire time were losers with nothing to say, besides trying to pretend to be Donald Trump a little bit, but just Trump light. So it's just weird. It's super interesting, right? The only thing they really did was have unelected leaders forcefully change the country in their favor outside of the will and wants of your average American, and then just pretended like they're winning when they're, by all intents and purposes, not. But, you know, that's just kind of is. And gerrymandering, right? But a lot of that got struck down as well. That's one of the reasons why Republicans are going to have a really terrible time in the future winning the House of Representatives, because a lot of their gerrymandering got busted. They talked a lot about union busting in this debate, but what's actually getting busted is gerrymandering. And none of them want to talk about it, because that's the only reason why Republicans really have any position in the House of Representatives at all, is because of massive amounts of gerrymandering. That's one of the big reasons why I don't think they're going to be winning the House very easily at any point in time, anytime soon. It's just hard to believe that those people can convince your average human being to vote for them when they have nothing, they give nothing, they serve nothing, they don't serve, they are, and that's basically it. And so I don't know how they're going to genuinely convince your average person these days when they're simply the culture war cringe lords who don't care about anything besides like what's trending on Twitter these days, and that's how they run their campaigns. They don't care about anything else besides what's trending on Twitter and Facebook, and being kind of like Donald Trump. And so now what? Where do they go? What do they do? And honestly, I don't know. It seems like the answer is nothing, right? It's just strange. Vivek had a big moment that I remember where he talked about revolution and how there needs to be a revolution in the country. I think it's him once again talking, like, kind of like sitting on Donald Trump and how he's like, oh, I'm going to be your vengeance, I'm going to be your revenge, I'm going to take revenge on them who did that to us, type stuff. That he was doing, and also maybe even trying to harp on Bernie Sanders, trying to get the sort of like Bernie Sanders type repubs or people who are at least sympathetic to his opinion about how this needs to change because them did that to us. They don't like, listen, they're huge on the anti-trans stuff, but they're always talking about theys and thems. Ain't that right, guys? It's really curious how that works out. Anyways, with that being said, he says that they need a revolution, especially when pertaining to how the country works. But it's so incredibly curious because bro literally makes COVID vaccines. He literally makes COVID vaccines. Like that's one of the things that his company did, is that they made COVID vaccines, and they made a lot of money from COVID vaccines. And a lot of the reasons why he's a billionaire these days is because that the company that he ran or runs, makes COVID vaccines, and he gets money from people dying. So, okay, once again, don't elect any of my puppets. Elect me, the puppeteer. It's just really super curious, interesting stuff. It's just really stupid. There was a really telling moment in the debate where everybody was asked if they believe that humans cause climate change, and not a single person, not one Republican raised their hand to say that it was caused by climate change. Not one. DeSantis, instead of like raising his hands, came out with a moment like came out with a moment that said that, oh, listen, we need to have the debate. We need to have more debate, even though we've been having this debate for absolute years, decades, a century even, actually. And they've still lost, but they want to keep having the debate because they know continuing to stall means that they get more money, even if it means that their own children live in a worse, or maybe even if things get as bad as they possibly could, non-existent world. Take a look at this.
Do you believe in human behavior is causing climate change? Raise your hand if you do.
Look, we're not school children. Let's
look at that. Did you see that? He had a thought. He was going to raise his hand, but then he saw that nobody else raised his hand. Look how fucking nasty. Look at this. Is why I call them maggots. They're such fucking bugs, dude. They're literal bugs, man. Like, they don't care about, and they're roaches, bro. The roach saw the light on in the kitchen and ran back under the fridge. Look at him.
We're not school.
Puts it up. Somebody wants to say something. He puts it right back down instantly. He just doesn't want to. He wants to be able to be like, oh yeah, raise my hand. But then if any pictures come out that his hand isn't up at all. Just, yeah, actual fruit flies. They are. They actually are. It's just crazy. Actual bugs, insects, cretins. It's just so gross because, like, man, it's every single summer is the hottest summer ever. Every single winter is the worst winter ever. And then like after, like, over and over and over again, when in the world are these people going to believe? Is their yachts sinking? Is that it? The wheels on their tires melting? Is that it? Like, what will it be? Their beachfront properties going under? What will it be to finally make them understand? And I don't know what it is, because these people are hallmarks of American capitalism that care more about what's happening today than they do than money that they can make today than money that they'll lose in the future. Because if they think they're going to lose money in the future, they'll just pull out, and then it'll be somebody else's problem for a lot of them. And it's just crazy. It's so sick. And this guy lives in Florida. His state is Florida. One of the first states to get hit with climate change is going to be Florida. And it is Florida at this moment in time. Florida oranges are becoming non-existent right now. And like, now and he still believes this. It's crazy to me. Even being hit in the face with the realization that your beliefs are wrong is not going to be enough for these people. They simply just don't care. They simply do not care. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is true. It is true. You're right, ladies and gentlemen. This was the entire GOP debate last night. You're right. They can't outlive it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all domestic terrorists. Please welcome.
It's true. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that back to my attention, because it is so true.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all domestic terrorists.
If you want to know what that was, it was CPAC. We are all domestic terrorists. So true. So true. I can't disagree with them. I can't. I really can't. I can't. Somebody had to say it. It was them. They are the chosen one. Somebody had to say it. Somebody had to say it. Rare rightoid W. That is true. It is very rare indeed. Maybe even one of the rarest. And that was just wild. The sort of like reality that these people live in is just, I mean, it's hard for me to even call it reality, because their reality is simply just non-existent. It's not. It doesn't exist. There is no reality. It's only manufactured bullshit for their own personal gain in that moment in time. Not even gain in the future, gain now. And that's what they really worry about. It's just so sick. It's unreality. You're right. They took alternative facts and fake news into a whole new direction. That was just the beginning. I couldn't even, nobody could even really imagine, right? The sort of world that Donald Trump was bringing us into, that he helped create. I don't think he didn't create all of those movements. He just kind of coalesced them into one figure that allowed it to, one charismatic figure that allowed it to bubble and ferment as something much different and much bigger than what it was previously. It's just so interesting and terrible even as well. It makes our country and the world the worst place, but that's just conservatives for you. You know how it is. Anyways, after that, the debate moved into the idea of abortion, which is basically what's keeping the Republicans from being able to win at all, almost anywhere. There were 6 ballot measures that were done that the announcers said happened, and literally none of them was the abortion position reaffirmed amongst the people at all, which shows very clearly that your average Republican is so much further away on the idea of abortion than your average American is, which is not surprising, but to them it very much was. And basically none of them touched on that at all because it was a horrible idea to, so they just basically deflected and kept up the same position that we love the idea of 9-year-olds giving birth. We love the idea of children being forced to give birth because the rape child deserves to be forced to give birth because that's exactly who they are. I made a tweet about this the other day. Right-wing talking heads learning that the rape child was forced to give birth. Anyways, you know how it is. You know how it is. And basically that's what I'm talking about. It's not super interesting to talk about, but one thing that is super interesting to talk about is how they went about this, okay? Because this is the really funny part. Basically what happened is that during this talk, DeSantis decided that it would be a great idea to do like the Joe Biden thing, where during the election where he just brings up fake ass stories and tries to say that they're real to kind of bolster his point. And this fake ass story was one for the history books, everyone. This was him telling the story about how a baby girl fought off 6 attempted abortions on abortion assassination attempts on her life while in the womb. She lived through 6 abortions, 6 whole abortions. She fought her way through every single one. A plan B, a morning after pill, falling down the stairs, 3 cases of Mike's Hard Lemonade party packs. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, or the Smirnoff Ice party packs. Okay. 3 packs of cigarettes, 15 hits of heroin under the toenail as well. All right. The fetus injection, she coughed it out. All right. And 6 attempted abortion dismemberments, all completely destroyed. The bitch has got plot armor. Okay. And in her moment of need, she ended up just like Guts in Berserk, where she fell out of her mom and was left to die on a silver platter. In the doctor's office, but yet just when things were all over and her ass was shriveling up, just like SpongeBob and Patrick in the SpongeBob movie when they were trapped in the knick-knack shop, just in the nick of time, her auntie swooped in and took her off and took her to get healthcare or something, or just give her some apple juice, I guess. And she then survived and lived a great life, and that's why the 9-year-old needs to be forced to give birth. Planned Parenthood hates this story. So true. The abortion attempts on my life left me scarred and deformed. Yeah, man, so true. She did have the perfect Binding of Isaac run. You're right. Mom's knife. She had Mom's knife and brimstone all in one. And she listen, you don't even get it, okay? You don't even get it. Easy run. She got tears up too, and that's rare. Yeah. I've watched Northern Lion before, so you get it. Give the shriveled abortion baby apple juice. You should. Tears up, pug. True. Oh, she popped out Mr. Squeezy in hand. That's true. That's why the 9-year-old needs to be forced to give birth. Everybody, we all know it, folks. Make the 9-year-old give birth. We all know it, folks. Ain't that right? But this was super interesting because in this is when I kind of realized like that they completely, just wholeheartedly are in the complete abandonment of the idea of the constitutional conservative and also the idea of states' rights, because this is when they said, this is in the debate where they said that they need to completely usurp liberal states from even allowing abortions at all, and they need to just permanently ban abortions, period. And if they can't do that, minimum do a 15-week abortion ban, or a lot of them said a 6-week abortion ban in the entire country, and they need to fight for that completely. And so that's where they completely moved away from the idea of states' rights. They even push for this, for the idea of states' rights. That's why they think that states should be able to choose this. They didn't care about states' rights. What they want is the 14-year-old to give birth. Right. Listen, there's a reason why listen, I just think it's super curious. Okay. I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm not going to say anything about anybody. I'm not even going to use the P word. Okay. But I just think it's super curious how conservatives are against sex ed, comprehensive sex ed, that is proven to show that it is proven to make children more educated about sex and be able to report them being abused by adults more. And the fact that most Republicans are men, older men specifically, especially the politicians, and they're against the idea of banning child marriage and against the idea of contraceptives in a lot of areas, especially Texas. And, you know, I just think it's super curious that they're also against abortion, especially and even for children who are like assaulted. I just think it's just, and the fathers of like babies born to teen mothers are predominantly like older and like adult and middle-aged men. And I just think it's just really curious how they're against all of that, and all comes together in this very curious way. And I'm not going to say anything about it, but I'm just going to say that it's just curious how that works out, don't you think? P3PO. P3DO. Oh yeah, P3DO type moment, P3DO type beat. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.